Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing well today. And today, before we start today's video, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Well, today we are going to discuss a very insightful and interesting article on critical thinking written by Adam Brandenburger, who is a professor at New York University. He has also served as a professor at Harvard Business School in the past. More details about him are shared in the description box below, so please do check it out. He has written some amazing articles which are published. You can also check it out on Google Scholar as well. So the topic for today is, in terms of critical thinking, to change the way you think, you need to change the way that you see. So let's get started. Think different, said the famous Apple advertisement. Excellent advice, obviously, to all creators, innovators, and entrepreneurs. But along with thinking differently in order to come up with revolutionary new ideas or products, there is also seeing differently. Now, great creators, innovators, and entrepreneurs look at the world in ways unlike many of us. Now, this is why they see opportunities that other people miss. I'm sure the story of Velcro must be well known to many of us. A Swiss engineer, George de Mestral, decided to look more closely at the burrs he found clinging to his clothing after a walk in the woods. He took out his microscope and saw that nature had designed hooks on the burrs, which had then attached themselves to looped fibers in his clothing. The famous hook and loop alternative to the zipper under the name Velcro was born. Today, there is a whole field called biomimetics devoted to imitating nature in order to solve human problems. Less well known but equally deserving of fame is the story of soft soap. An American entrepreneur, Robert Taylor, decided to look more closely at how bars of soap actually appeared once unwrapped and used in bathrooms. Zooming in on the soap dish in an otherwise spotless setting, he saw an unpleasant puddle of ooze. He decided that the answer was liquid soap dispensed in a beautiful pump dispenser. And this is how soft soap, which changed the entire soap industry through body washes and liquid soaps, was born. Two brilliant entrepreneurs who looked at things differently, whether through a microscope or a zoom lens, and whether literally or metaphorically. They took the key step of looking at the familiar in an unfamiliar way. The great French mathematician Blaise Pascal said, "Small minds are concerned with the extraordinary." Well, it seems he had in mind something similar. Look at what is right in front of us, but look in a way that escapes most people. There is a word for this activity, which is called defamiliarization. Working in the early 20th century, Russian literary theorist Viktor Shklovsky pointed out how Tolstoy achieved heightened effect in his writing via techniques such as describing objects from a distorted perspective and refusing to use the customary names for objects, and by generally making strange, that is, defamiliarizing, the otherwise familiar. Now, these examples gives us some tips on how to stop seeing it in unfamiliar and generative ways. When we look at the world, we should not just examine, but examine with a deliberately different perspective. Not just name what is around us, but come up with new names. Not just consider the whole, but break things up or down into pieces. Now, these techniques can help us see our way to the new and the revolutionary, whether in the arts or in the business. Sherlock Holmes famously said once to Watson, "You see, but you do not observe." Now, the distinction is clear. More advice on how to break through the familiar and instead truly observe, comes from the psychologist and writer Maria Konnikova in her book Mastermind: How to Think Like Sherlock Holmes. And in that, she writes, to observe, you must learn to separate situation from interpretation, yourself from what you are seeing. As a technique to improve our ability to operate this way, Konikova suggests describing a situation of interest out loud or in writing to a companion. As she notes, Holmes used Watson in this way to talk through his observations when investigating a case, and often it was through this exercise that key points in the case would become more evident. Now, this is another technique for aspiring artists and entrepreneurs and consulting detectives to try when it comes to critical thinking. Our brains are designed to stop us paying too much attention. Now, this is well demonstrated by the optical illusion called Troxler fading. If presented with a steady image in the area of our peripheral vision, we actually stop seeing it after a while. Now, this phenomenon, the general neuroscientific term is habituation, probably points to an efficient way in which the brain operates. Neurons stop firing once they have sufficient information about an unchanging stimulus. But this does not mean that habituating is always our friend. We can think of the effort not just to think differently, but also to see differently as a way of countering our built-in tendency to habituate, to sink into the familiar way of seeing and experiencing. One way in which great artists, entrepreneurs, and creators of all kinds come up with the insights that enable them to change the world is that, very literally, they do not see the way most of us do. Their methods teach us that by seeing differently, we can notice what no one else has yet. Now, this is how the future is built. So that's it for today's video. I hope you found this video very interesting and insightful to implement in your personal and professional lives with a critical thinking mindset and seeing the world, people around you, scenarios around you from a different perspective, and yet in a familiar and unfamiliar way. So stay tuned for many more such interesting articles, stories, case studies, games, and my thoughts related to management. I'll see you next week.